Hello, and welcome to Shrink, the podcast for the mind. I'm Philippe and I talk to the people who want to have a better understanding of their issues with weight and body image. So yes, hi, and welcome back to the podcast. It's nice to know that more and more of you are listening to my podcast. I really hope it helps as many people as possible feeling better about themselves and also understand better how things work in terms of diets, in terms of weight loss, but not only, of course. I've been talking in previous episodes about relationships, and it's something I'd like to talk more about in the future. But today, we're talking about something that's been coming up a lot lately, especially with more and more people taking medications like Ozempic, Wegovy, or Mounjaro. These GLP-1 medications, that's the type of medication we're talking about, well, they're changing the way people eat, literally. They reduce your appetite, they slow digestion, and for many people, they take away that drive to eat. And for some, that's a huge relief, of course, because if you had to lose weight for medical reasons, or if you've been struggling with your weight for many years and you've tried, so many different diets, of course it's a relief because now there is this injection that you can do once a week and you will lose the weight. More and more people are talking about tablets as well, which will be on the market in not so long. They're doing the trial test and apparently it works quite well and is quite safe. So soon it will be much easier to take this kind of medication. It won't be injections, it will be tablets, probably once a day. But still, it's a relief for some, but for others, it's surprisingly complicated. Well, in fact, not that surprisingly. It doesn't come as a surprise for me. Because if you've used food for comfort, or stress, or boredom, or emotional support, and now you physically can't eat the way you used to, it's not just your body that's adjusting, it's your emotional life too. So in today's episode, I will be digging into that. What happens when food isn't there as your go-to comfort? What comes up emotionally? And more importantly, what can you do about it? But why food becomes emotional? Let's just name this upfront. Emotional eating is incredibly common. It's not a failure. It's not something to be ashamed of. For a lot of people, and me included, food has been the most consistent and accessible way to cope with life. It's soothing, it's predictable, and it gives immediate relief. Whether it's chocolate after a breakup, or takeout after a draining day at work, food gives us something to look forward to. In a way, it holds us. And this may sound a bit weird maybe to some of you, but sometimes food is the only thing that feels safe. Especially if you grew up in a home where emotions weren't really allowed, or where comfort wasn't reliably available. I know that when I was sad, when I was a young boy, my mother used to say, "Oh, I don't like watching you or seeing you crying or feeling sad. Why don't you have some chocolate? Or why don't you have a piece of cake? Or why don't you have this?" It was always food. It's been taught to me since I was a young boy. When I'm sad, I shouldn't cry because when I cry, I make my mother unhappy. And she may cry as well, which nobody wants. No kid wants their father or their mother to be sad because of them. So she gave me food. And that became my way of dealing with my sadness for many years. But not only my sadness. Afterwards, I got used to use food to manage other emotions, mainly my anger. So when I was unhappy about something, when I was angry, I would go for food. And then something I talked about quite a few times, I would turn the anger against myself. I would overeat, feel bad about myself, and call my names by all kind of different words that you're probably familiar with. I would think, I'm a pig. I don't have any motivation. I'm so greedy. I mean, the usual. So yes, I know what it's like to manage our emotions with food. I've helped hundreds of clients now dealing with their emotional eating and helping them eating according to their hunger and their society, but not eating emotionally, which doesn't mean that it never happens again. It can happen again, but then you detect it. You detect that moment when you're not hungry and you're eating something without really appreciating it, only to manage something which is happening to you, which is difficult to cope with. And once you learn how to detect that when you're doing it, then you've got the tools to stop doing it. But it takes a bit of time. So if food has become your coping mechanism, it's like because at some point it did work. It helped you get through. It gave you something to hold on to. And the same goes for alcohol, by the way. Now, fast forward to starting a GLP-1 medication. Suddenly, that old comfort doesn't feel good anymore. You're too full fast, or you're full too fast. Eating more than a few bites feels physically uncomfortable. And the whole emotional process of turning to food, well, it just doesn't work anymore. And that can be annoying, of course, even destabilizing, because you're left thinking, okay, now what? I've had some bad news at work that make me feel anxious, and I can't go for my favorite medication to soothe things. So how am I going to manage this? So what does GLP-1 medications change? Let's talk about what's actually happening here. They change your appetite regulation system. They slow your digestion and make your brain feel satisfied sooner, sometimes before you've had the chance to emotionally enjoy what you're eating. So, for example, if you're used to eating a whole plate of pasta when you're feeling anxious, well, now you're full after 5 bites. Your usual way of calming yourself down is gone. And that's not just frustrating, it can actually be upsetting. Some people describe feeling kind of lost or disconnected, like something is missing. Others notice their mood dipping, sadness, anxiety, irritability. Or they find themselves turning to other behaviors instead, doom scrolling, drinking, shopping, overworking. They're finding a new addiction to cope with their emotions because the ones they've been using for years sometimes before that, well, they just can't do it anymore. And in some cases, people start feeling guilty for not feeling better even though they're losing weight. Because everyone around them is saying, you must be so happy. But inside they're thinking, why do I feel more anxious than before? Some people are also taking these medications without telling the people around them that they're doing it. I mean, they don't have to tell them, but they feel like they're hiding something, like they have a dark secret, like they're cheating. And of course, with that comes a lot of guilt. And on top of not being able to manage their emotions with food anymore, they've got that new guilt, which they never thought they would have before. So if that's you, just know you're not doing anything wrong. You're not broken. Your emotions are just trying to adapt now that food isn't there to numb or soothe them the way you used to. So the big question becomes what to do instead. What do I do with these emotions now? First, and I really mean this, please don't expect yourself to just cope better overnight. This is a big transition, and you deserve to treat it like one. It's not only a transition because you're losing weight. For some people, losing weight means losing some kind of a persona that came with their weight. You were that overweight, jolly person who loved food, who was cooking for friends, who was happy to go to the restaurant and try new things, and suddenly that persona is not there anymore. To bring that topic to life, I want to share a fictional story. It's kind of fictional, but it's really based on many real experiences I've heard from clients. So let's meet Sarah. Sarah didn't expect to feel like this. She had spent years wanting to lose weight, obsessing over it, really. Counting calories, trying keto, failing keto, starting exercise plans with enthusiasm and abandoning them 3 weeks later. She had 2 wardrobes, one for when she was on track and one for when she wasn't. And when Ozempic entered the picture, it felt like a miracle. Within weeks, her appetite plummeted. She stopped thinking about food all the time. The cravings that used to feel like a tidal wave, gone. It felt like someone had reached into her brain and flipped a switch. For the first time in years, she felt like she was in control. But 3 months later, something shifted. It started one random Tuesday. She had a fight with her sister. Nothing explosive, just one of these passive-aggressive conversations that leaves you feeling misunderstood and 12 years old all over again. Normally, she would go home, throw on her comfiest hoodie and order Thai food. Cashew chicken, sticky rice, maybe a Coke. Eat on the sofa. Feel the warmth of the food settle in her stomach like a blanket. Cry a little, scroll, sleep. But that night, she opened the delivery app, hovered over her usual order and realized she didn't want it. Not couldn't have it because of willpower, literally didn't want it. Her stomach felt heavy just thinking about it, and suddenly she didn't know what to do with herself. She paced her living room like a stranger in her own body, tried watching TV but couldn't focus. The sadness, the old ache, that soft weight in her chest just sat there, unmet. Normally food would have wrapped around it like a hug, but now there was just space, too much space. And it kept happening, again and again, after a bad day at work, after loneliness crept in on a Saturday night, after seeing old pictures of herself from before the divorce. Every time she would reach for food and find it wasn't there, or rather, her body no longer wanted it. She started to feel like she was grieving something, not the food itself, but what food had done for her. It had been a friend, a comfort, a distraction. A way to say, I'm here, I matter, I deserve something good. Without it, the emotions came raw, loud, sometimes for no reason at all. The weight was coming off, yes. Her clothes were looser. People complimented her constantly. You look amazing. I almost didn't recognize you. You must feel so much better. She smiled, said thank you. But inside she didn't feel amazing. She felt hollow, or sometimes tight with anxiety. She found herself staying up late, scrolling through old texts from her ex, crying more often, feeling exposed in a way she couldn't quite explain. One night, she tried to eat a slice of cake at a friend's birthday party, something she would normally love. But halfway through it, her stomach flipped and she had to throw it away. Her friend laughed and said, "Who even are you now?" Sarah didn't laugh back, because honestly she wasn't sure. She wasn't sure who she had become. Who was she without emotional eating? Who was she when she couldn't soften the edges of a hard day with food? Who was she now that the thing she'd used to care for herself, the only thing that really worked, was suddenly unavailable? She didn't have answers, but eventually she started asking different questions, like, what am I actually feeling right now? What would comfort look like if it wasn't food? So she bought herself a heated blanket, and she started lighting a candle before bed, just to signal her body that it was time to soften. She started journaling, even though it felt a bit awkward at first. Wrote things like, "I'm sad, and I don't know why, and I miss being able to go numb." And she found a therapist, someone who never once said, "You must be so happy with your progress." Instead, the therapist said things like, "It sounds like food was doing a lot for you emotionally. What else can you trust to do that now?" It was hard, it was slow, but it was honest. 6 months in, Sarah stood in front of the mirror and saw a smaller version of herself. But she also saw someone braver, someone who was learning to sit with her feelings instead of stuffing them down, someone who didn't reach for food every time she was hurting. Not because she couldn't, but because she was learning other ways to care for herself. And maybe that was a real transformation. Not what happened on the scale, but what happened inside. Sarah's stories isn't based on one person. It's a blend of many stories that I've heard in my work. If you heard something in that feels familiar, you're not alone, and there is support. You don't have to figure it out on your own. The emotions you used to quiet down with food, they're not bad. They're just messages, they're asking for attention. And now that food isn't muting them, they're louder. So now it's time to learn some new ways to listen. Let me give you a few ideas that can actually help. First of all, name the feeling. It sounds simple, but even saying "I'm feeling overwhelmed right now" is a step towards emotional regulation. Or "I'm feeling anxious", "I'm feeling sad", "I'm feeling angry". Just name the feeling. It's not easy to find out the feeling. Usually we have no clue what kind of emotion we're dealing with. Move your body gently. I'm not talking about punishing workouts, just moving your body in a way that feels grounding, like stretching, walking, dancing. It can really shift your nervous system. I would also encourage you, because I know it works so well, to write down your emotions. I have a food and emotion diary, which I use with many of my clients, and I'm more than happy to send it to you by email if you want it. Putting a name on your emotions and writing them down is a way to put them aside, at least for some short time. You can use some sensory grounding tools, like a warm shower or smelling some lavender or any flower, in fact. There's so many flowers outside this time of the year, or holding an ice cube. This will bring you back into your body and out of the emotional storm. But I would also recommend to get support, whether that's a therapist, a coach, a support group, or a trusted friend. Don't try to do this work alone. And please, be gentle with yourself. Emotional eating is not a character flaw. It's a survival tool that may have served you well, and now you're learning something new. Something that takes practice, it takes patience, and it takes a whole lot of self-compassion. I know that this was a tender one. These conversations often are. But here is what I want you to take away today. GLP-1 medications can change your relationship with food, but they don't automatically heal your relationship with emotions. You can learn to comfort yourself in new ways. You can feel safe in your body even when it's changing. And you're not alone. If this feels harder than you expected, keep that in mind, you're not alone. If you're navigating this right now and you want some support, I'm here. I work with people every day on emotional eating, body image, and building a kinder relationship with themselves. In the meantime, take a breath, take care of yourself, and remember, healing can be messy, but it's possible. I'll see you next time.